Uh, Good morning to you, good morning to Burgundians living wherever you are across the world. Thank you for joining us for this press briefing. This press briefing, as planned, is to treat primarily with the current climatic conditions and especially how it impacts our ability to deliver water to our communities, so that you will also have an appreciation for the efforts of WASA and all that WASA is doing to ensure you have some measure of water in your taps, and so that you appreciate that there is sometimes very little we could do about our existing climatic conditions. Also, it gives us an opportunity to speak to what's upcoming and how we are in fact preparing for the upcoming rainy season. As it is now, we might be complaining about the lack of rainfall, but very soon you might be banging down my doors about how the water is too much. So we have to prepare for that. And so I'm joined today by the director of TEMA, Mr. Alan Stewart. I'm also joined by WASA Tobago head, Mr. Brian Williams, and also Mrs. Dekoto from out of the Met Office. After we have completed the conversations about our current climatic conditions, the future ones, and how we are treating with our water shortage issues, and how we are preparing for the upcoming hurricane season, then I will allow for us to have a short pause, and then I will take quite quickly questions that we may have on other issues, because certainly I will not want to answer certain questions that might be political in nature with my esteemed guests here. I wouldn't want to see their faces on your nightly newscast while I shoot from the hips, politically, so to speak. So let me start with my friends across at the Met Office, Ms. Dekoto, and she will give us some explanation of what we are experiencing, when can we experience some rainfall, and how we ought to prepare for what we have now, and of course what's upcoming. So over to you, Mrs. Dekoto.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chief Sec, fellow members of the TDMC and the viewing and listening public. My job this morning is, just as the Chief Sec said, to give you an idea of what we are experiencing and what we can look forward to for the upcoming rainy and hurricane season. Now, currently, we are in a El Nino phase, and we are moving into a neutral phase, and then La Nina from July to September. What that means for us is that we are going to be having conditions now that we'll start with some rainfall during the late half of May, and that's just 1 week, and then into June, we are going to continue having some rainfall. Because of the El Nino going into a neutral phase and very warm sea surface temperatures to the east of us in the Atlantic Basin, this is going to modulate the ITCZ over us in a very short space of time. In addition to which, the current conditions that we have now are going to start getting more moist and so on. Our satellite imagery, which I didn't put any of except for at the end of my presentation, we are experiencing more moisture in the atmosphere. I'm sure everyone is seeing the last few days we have had some rain in the nights, in the days, and so on. About 2 days ago, we had 15 millimeters of rainfall at the airport, where we had a small perturbation passing. Last night, we had about 2 millimeters of rainfall. So it's getting here slowly but surely, the rainy season, and then the hurricane season, which starts at the 1st of June to November the 30th. Right, so for the upcoming hurricane season, what we expect is above normal activity for our area more than anything else, almost a 60% chance, 32% of it being normal, but more than likely we are going to have more rainfall activity than we had last year. Moving on, we expect to have more storms than we had over the last year, over the last 20 years or so. Right, we expect about 4 named storms and likely hurricanes about 3, number of hurricanes about 1 to 4 hurricanes. Now, this doesn't mean that all these things are going to affect us. They are going to be to the east of us, and as they are to the east of us and they start moving in our area of interest, if we look at the next slide, we'll see our area of interest. Go forward a bit. Right, our area of interest, which is just about 7 degrees north to about 15 degrees north, and then 65 degrees west, straight on to the east, just off the African coast. In that area, that is our area of interest. Anything forming in that area can affect us. We have to look at it. There are feeder bands. And even if we don't get a direct hit, especially for Tobago, who is north and east of Trinidad and more exposed, we can have activity affecting us, in addition to which some of these systems that we have seen in the past, they go a little north, then they are a lot erratic, like Felipe was last year, and they modulate the ITCZ over our area, even pulling it as far north as Barbados. So therefore, anything in that area of interest, we have to look at it carefully, that it may affect Tobago. On to our next slide now. Now, not because we are in the rainy season means that every day is going to have rain, right? We know that what we experienced last year during the rainy season, we had hot spells, which defined by WMO is 5 days or more of in succession of days with temperatures exceeding 35 degrees Celsius. We also have heat spells as such, so that will be about 3 days or so. So this activity, we expect to have that affecting us later in the year, around September, more August to September. Those are the months that we will have heat spells, and that also coincides with the peak of the hurricane season, which is around the middle of September. Right, the areas that are most likely to be affected by that in Tobago are the southwestern areas, Crown Point and so on, because as we all know, that area is becoming even more urbanized than it was in the past, right? What we expect this year, wetter than usual conditions for Tobago. That is good news for WASA. There's a chance that the western areas of Tobago, I don't think you'll have any catchment areas in that area, but that doesn't mean that the activity will be exclusive to southwestern Tobago. So rainfall wetter than normal conditions over Trinidad and Tobago, especially, well, Tobago, we are speaking about Tobago. So northeast, as you've seen those catchment areas, the blue areas, the chance of above normal activity is very high for us. So that's good news. Right, and then the first half of the season, June to August, likely to be normal to above normal, wetter than usual conditions for most of Tobago. So farmers, again, WASA, the disaster managers, you have to pay attention to this, because of course, when we have wetter than normal days, and you may have a few wet days, 25 millimeters of rainfall, even 10 millimeters of rainfall in about 5 days, this could lead to flooding, landslides, and so on, right? So this is something we have to be aware of. So in general, the entire wet season we expect, from which will start, should be declared sometime next week, perhaps even over the weekend, once we have the passage of a tropical wave with measurable rainfall or the ITCZ over our area, then we can declare the rainy season as being started. So that may start next week. And I'll tell you a little more about that later on in the presentation. So wetter than normal, which is good news for us, bearing in mind what has been going on with our reservoirs in Tobago. So these are flood indicators for our disaster managers. Monthly rainfall exceeding 250 millimeters, 24-hour rainfall exceeding 25 millimeters, 5-day spells, wet spells, which I said just now is like 10 millimeters of rainfall in a day, or 3-day wet spells, because that means that the earth will become saturated and there's a chance for flooding and landslips. Right, the probability of June exceeding 250. Good news for water managers, not so good news for general residents in areas that are flood prone and emerging flood prone areas, because we expect that there's a high possibility of having 250 millimeters or above of rainfall in June. Right? again for November, similar conditions. And that is the secondary peak of the rainfall. November, you usually have floods in Trinidad for Diwali and so on. So this chance of exceeding rainfall again in November is very high for us, the rainfall exceeding 250 millimeters, and the likelihood of floods, landslides, and by that time, of course, more than likely the earth will be saturated from activity throughout the rainy season, because the rainy season will start soon, and then the hurricane season ends at the 30th of November, but we will still be in the rainy season, because what La Nina means for us as well is an extended rainy season and a wetter than normal rainy season. So the risk of flooding now during the wet season for Tobago, southwest Tobago, and central and eastern Tobago, northeast Tobago, emerging flood-prone areas like Crown Point, which we used to have floods before, but not as much as now with the new projects, I would not say, that are going on there, but you are sometimes trapped in Crown Point. You try to get through the local Storby Road. There used to be ponding, now it's actually flooding that you cannot, it is impassable. And then when you turn around to pass through by Cocoa Reef, you can't pass there either. So you have two rivers basically blocking you, even though you come out on the other side through Bonaccord and try to go down to the airport, you're either trapped outside of the airport or in the area of the airport. So you probably jump in the sea and swim across. But that is what is happening now in Crown Point, unfortunately. I've experienced it last year as well. There was an incident where the airport, the runway had to be closed because it was not just ponding, there was a flood on the runway. And it took about 45 minutes to run off. So that slowed down operations at the airport. So these are the emerging areas of flooding, right? So as I said earlier, generally we expect wetter than normal rainy season, and the flood potential this year is as high as it would have been in 2022 when we had a La Nina year, and most of the rainy season, the rainfall totals for each month was higher than the long-term average. So that is something that we have to bear in mind, Tobagonians. And now, this is the model run from yesterday for the weekend. That darker bluish green area over us there, that is the total precipitable water. We are expecting a tropical wave to pass over the weekend. The axis should pass us around Saturday night, around midnight. There's a high amount of moisture associated with it, especially behind the axis. It's an African easterly wave, and this is their characteristic. So more of that weather will come more Sunday. However, I will tell you that even though we have this signature at this level, at the upper levels, the dynamics are not so favorable for much rainfall. But we'll see what happens and how it lines up. But there's not much diffluence or anything like that. But once this brings rainfall, we can possibly declare the start of the rainy season. This is the GFS model. The next image will show you another GFS model. That plume there, that brownish plume, that is actually moisture coming towards us associated with that tropical wave again. So again, it is there, the signature is there, and we will more than likely see some rain over the weekend. The other slide is the European model, which shows rainfall again. So they are in agreement, and this model has been in agreement with what's going on recently more than any of the others. So more than likely we will get some rainfall over the weekend. The amounts I'm not sure, but once it's measurable, the rainy season will be declared, and that will be ahead of the start of the hurricane season, which is the 1st of June. Right? So that's it. Remember to look out for our caps and so on, and our alerting, and download our app and follow us to get information in real time.
I thank you very much, Ms. Dekoto, for a comprehensive presentation on our current climatic conditions and when we can expect rain, what we can expect in the upcoming hurricane season. I want us to segue to Mr. Williams out of WASA, and I've asked him to be here so that we could treat with the challenge that they have. And I know you all have been hard on WASA at times. I get the calls. and the protestations sometimes, but I want him to share with you how they are working round the clock to bring some relief in the interim while we wait on rainfall. Certainly at some point, as an island, we'll have to have a much more comprehensive conversation about water and how we manage our water resource. But for now, WASA is in fact trying their very best to provide as much as they can provide, especially to economic sectors that really depend on their delivery. So I will go to Mr. Williams at this time.
A pleasant good morning to Tobago and the entire viewing and listening public. Thank you, Chief Secretary, for inviting me to be part of this discussion and allowing us the chance as WASA to sensitize the Tobago public on where we are, what the challenges we face, and what are our plans with a view to mitigation to ensure that we can meet our mandate by providing the supplies that are required for life as we have come accustomed to it. I'd just like to start by thanking my fellow professional from the Met Services who has said to us that it is very possible that the rainy season will begin on Sunday, if I am not mistaken. It's the best news I've heard all week, and I really do. I thank you for that news, and I do hope that all goes according to the plan that has been set out by her and the wider Met Services. All right, so we'll move straight into a presentation that we prepared, and it speaks to the impact of the adverse weather conditions on WASA's delivery of water to the Tobago public, and the footnote is soon to end, according to the Met Services Division. Could we have the other slide, please? This slide shows the areas of water delivery which coincide with the areas, the population centers, how it is distributed across Trinidad, across Tobago, excuse me. In the southwest, we have an extremely high population density. It also coincides with the tourism products, the higher levels of tourism and those kinds of things. Generally to the east, we have the settlements along the coast, along the main roads. At this point, generally, we produce, on average, about 12 million gallons of water to the public on a daily basis, and this is divided between surface sources, the rivers, Courland River, Richmond River, Kingsby River, Big River in Mason Hall, etc. And the groundwater is the wells, which provide about 50%, so it's a 50-50 split. At this point, the groundwater reserves have been holding, but the challenge is that the surface water levels are falling at a rapid rate. The slide, if you look at the slide, that as of January, we were above our 12 million gallon average daily production, and you see where we are now. We have a shortfall of 1.5 million gallons, which is a lot of water. All right? And the trend is, if the trend continues, we in for some problems. So this is where we're going to sit and have a discussion about it. All right? We try to capture the regression as it relates to Tobago on a community-by-community basis based on the surface water supply systems. And if you look at it, we have to the east, 80% reduction in the supply to Charlottesville via the Charlottesville Water Treatment Plant. That 80% represents the reduction in the flows at the rivers of where we abstract for production. I just want to spend a minute and just give you some context. Charlottesville and Kingsby Water Treatment, they provide a supply to Speyside and going up the road. One of the challenges we have in those areas is that because of the terrain, we are unable to introduce water into those systems from, say, Richmond or those other areas. They are isolated in our ability to provide water, save and except from the sources that now provide them with a supply. So an 80% drop in reduction in production in Charlottesville means that the community is heavily disaffected, and the options for alternate courses of actions limited as it relates to providing supplies from neighboring areas. Mr. Daniel, could I? All right. Just to further illustrate the point I'm trying to bring home. The slide that we have before shows how the flows have changed from January till now at these major river sources. The Colan River, you normally have 2.3 million gallons as an example. We're now doing 620,000 gallons. It is really, really concerning, and it impinges very directly on our ability to provide a supply to the public. And I think it's important that we spend some time getting this information out there so that you, John Public, can understand where we are in our attempts to carry out our mandate. At this point, I would like to look at the challenge we have starting in the East on a system-by-system basis. The intention here is to show you, give you a visual, because they say a picture paints 1,000 words. The intention is to give you one second, we're having some. The intention is to give you a visual on. We're having a. 1 minute, please. We're having some technical challenge. Notwithstanding, well, while we are getting it sorted, the intention is to show you, give you a visual of where we are in this moment. So the first picture that you're seeing on your screen in front of you is an aerial of the Charlottesville intake. And from where we sit, you realize what's going on there. To the extreme left represents where we have the extra water flowing over. We have nothing passing. On the right-hand side, that's where we're abstracting from. We have some challenges. So having showed you that, I'd just like to move it to the technical slide. Right. We have, at this point, experienced an 80% reduction in the flows and, by extension, the associated production from the Charlottesville water treatment plant on the Charlottesville River. This, and when you pair it with the what said earlier, as it relates to our inability because of the geography of Charlottesville to give them water from neighboring sources, it puts us in a very, very uncomfortable position as it relates to our ability to deliver. Charlottesville is fed by this plant and a well, the new scheme well, and the new scheme well, and we have some challenges. In attempting to ensure that we communicate and we interact with the public to ensure that we deliver the best possible service under the given circumstances, we have adjusted the schedules and we have put it across there so for the view of the public. These schedules will be published, and the intention is that as and when the changes, if the situation continues, they will have to be modified, and we will come back to you, the public, and communicate them so that you know what we can deliver. All right? These are the challenges that relate to Charlottesville. Moving along, this is an aerial view of the Kings Bay water treatment plant, the intake of the Kings Bay water treatment plant, which provides a supply to Speyside and some areas of Delaford. Nothing is passing. Just want you to understand where we are. So at this point, based on the picture that we're showing, we have no flow coming down from the Kings Bay. We're taking everything. So moving to the technical, right. We have a 62% reduction in the flows at the Kings Bay River, and by extension, our ability to abstract water. To offset some of the challenges in the Charlottesville and the Speyside area, some of the mitigation methods that we have implemented, we are trucking. There are challenges associated with trucking, which I will discuss in a minute. But one of the ways we are attempting to approach it is we are going to be proactive in our water trucking. For example, when the supply is going to Speyside from the Kings Bay intake, the high points like Lucivale, and instead of attempting to hold the supply so that the elevated customers can receive a supply or miss it, we have instituted a program where we will be trucking to the elevated customers to taking them out at the time when the supply is being run, to ensure that we are better able to distribute to all to the other customers. Because traditionally, to get to the high point customers, we would normally have to hold the supply in the area for a couple hours, much longer. And because of the limited resources at the intake, it presents a challenge to giving out the other areas within the Speyside and Delaford communities a supply. So the intention is we will begin at the start of the schedule to truck to the high customers. And at this point, I would just like to say that we are working in coordination with the fire services, they are in possession of more up-to-date appliances than we in terms of water trucking equipment, and they are assisting us. We are working coordinatively to ensure that we are able to give the high point customers water, and so we could ensure we could bring some relief to Speyside and Delaford off the Kingsway system, pending the coming of the rains, which are much expected and anticipated. Moving forward, the Richmond water treatment plant has, over the past years, been one of the most sustainable and resilient sources of supply for the entire Tobago. Flow measurements taken on the Richmond River show that the flows are the lowest that they have been in the last 30 years. This speaks to the introduction that was made by our Honorable Chief Secretary about the climatic challenges that we have, and as they impinge on our ability to do what we have to do. At this point, the Richmond treatment plant, which normally would run all season long, we find ourselves in a situation where we have to shut down production to allow the river the intake to build. We normally do 1.5 million gallons. We're seeing a 35% drop in production. The mitigation methods for the major and maybe the only at this point mitigation method is what at this point, especially in the east, is trucking to affected customers. Like was said for the Speyside and for the Kings Bay and Charlottesville systems, the intention there is to, at the start of the schedules to the different areas, the customers which have been identified, high point customers, we will begin trucking to them before they call us to ensure that we have a proactive approach to getting a supply to them during the period of the schedule. Right? We have here the Hillsborough Water Treatment Plant, which serves Bacalet, Mount St. George, and those areas. That's an aerial view. As you can see, nothing is flowing over the way. The mitigation methods remain the same, and until the rainfall pattern changes, the challenges remain. All right, Hillsborough Dam. The Hillsborough Dam is our largest impounding reservoir that serves a very wide cross-section from people from Mount St. George all the way across the Plymouth Road. The geographical span is very wide. It is, by virtue of it, is above the top water level is 870 feet above sea level, and is our most strategic reservoir by virtue of the fact that because of the elevation, in the event that we have an island-wide situation where possibly we lose power, God forbid a hurricane, etc., we are still able to, in a limited sense, still provide water to a large portion of the community downstream because of the elevation difference. Hillsborough, at the start of the dry season, when it's filled, has a capacity of about 250 million imperial gallons. And the basis of impounding reservoirs is to ensure that you collect enough water to take you through from the beginning of dry season to the end of the dry season. At this point, we are below the long-term average, and if the rain does not come, we will find ourselves in a position where we're further challenged. Because Hillsborough is an impounding reservoir, we have the Mr. Daniel, go forward. All right. If you're looking, those islands are not normally there. I just want to, for context, if you look at the beach lines, you want a better set of words, those areas are usually covered by water. It gives you an appreciation of how much water we do not have. This is where we are. Those areas of land are usually covered by water. So that you have I want you to take a minute and get an appreciation for the challenges you face and where we are. Right? One of the good things about Hillsborough in our process is that because this is an impounding reservoir, we have the ability to manage our abstraction. So the 14% reduction is we manage it based on what we have, our long-term average, and our production shortfalls as it relates to allowing us to get to the end of the rainy season with usable water inside of the Hillsborough Dam. Right? The schedules, the people who are on the Hillsborough Dam system, like with all the other systems, schedules have been prepared to reflect what we can deliver, and these schedules will be published in the media. God forbid, and the predictions that were made by the Met don't come true, and this period is prolonged. As and when, not just for Hillsborough, for all the other supply zones, we will be modifying the schedules to reflect what we can deliver, and we will we'll communicate it to the public, and as and when we will have the discourse so that we all understand where we are in moving from where we are to when the rains eventually come. Courland Water Treatment Plant. The Courland Water Treatment Plant, just take a minute to look at this video. Just take a minute. That is the Courland Water Treatment Plant. 1.5 million gallons of water are abstracted from this facility on a daily basis to provide water to Southwest Tobago, the airport, the hotel sector, and this is where we are. We have, up to this moment, we experienced a 78% reduction in production by virtue of the inability of the Courland River to provide us with the required amount of water to ensure that you can abstract, treat, transmit, and distribute. The schedules have been modified. I just want to spend a minute to talk about mitigation. One of the advantages of the Courland Water Treatment, of the challenges that one of the benefits that we as an organization and wider Tobago have experienced, are able to experience, is the fact that by the Courland Water Treatment Plant, some redundancies have been built in to allow us to, to give an alternate supply to customers, especially at the extremities of the Courland system. In this moment, there are some challenges. You would recall in our development program a couple months ago under the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Minister, we would have installed and commissioned a transmission line, 7.6 kilometers of 16-inch pipeline to take water from neighboring systems into Southwest Tobago, especially for situations as these. In the moment, the transmission line has been damaged, and we are in the process of getting repaired in conjunctively with THA because the damage happened as the development works were happening in the back there, but we are working together to ensure that the redundancies can be put back in place by repairing the line. All right? Going back to our presentation, at this point, after having given you an update on the challenges system by system, and giving you a visual of the challenges that we face, the next logical question is, what are we doing about it in a short, medium, and long-term / sustainable way? All right? In the recent past, WASA has embarked on a number of development initiatives where projects are funded Ministry of Public Utilities, the Minister of Public Utilities, and under a number of different programs, the Wells Development Program, the Community Water Investment Program. And I'll take this opportunity to say that we are the THA, we are in the process of having some talks with the THA who have expressed interest in coming on board and being part of the whole development process with a view to ensuring that all Tobagonians, independent of their leanings, have access to a consistent and sustainable supply across all seasons in the face of all the climatic challenges that we now face. And the development program is geared at exactly that, ensuring that we as WASA, as Tobago, are able to meet and treat with the challenges, notwithstanding what is tossed at us. That's the basis behind the development program. A lot of development works have been done, and the process continues. All right? I just want to take 1 minute while we're talking about development to speak to desalination. In the moment, and against the backdrop of the challenges that have been identified in the Charlottesville Speyside areas, as it relates to the inability to provide an alternate source of supply, a project has been earmarked where a desalination plant, in the first instance, could be commissioned and installed in the Charlottesville area to ensure that the challenges that Charlottesville faces seasonally will become a thing of the past by the commissioning, installation, construction of a desalination plant aimed at taking Charlottesville to a level of supply where independent of how harsh the dry season challenges are, they will be able to receive a supply that can be described as consistent. All right? The desalination initiative is by no means just limited to Charlottesville. Discussions and planning is ongoing to ensure that all measures that are required to ensure that the job of providing a sustainable supply within the parameters of quality, pressure, flows can be met by the organization across all seasons. Right? All right, the diagram in front of you is just showing some of the areas. The projects have been done across the length and the breadth of Tobago, and the intent, notwithstanding, I just want to pause to see, notwithstanding that we are facing a number of challenges, imagine if these projects had not been done. All right? In addition to the projects that have been completed, there are a number of upcoming projects all aimed at sustainable improvement across all seasons in the water supply. All right? Chief among them is the commission and installation, construction of a treatment plant on the Goldsboro River, which has proven over the years to be one of the more robust rivers across all seasons in Tobago. So, a treatment plant is in the works, catering to do 2 million gallons of water, which, with some other infrastructural works that are also ongoing, will allow us to even take water from Goldsboro to Crown Point if required. I spoke before of the desalination plant in Charlottesville, and there are a number of pipelines aimed at improving the levels of service and providing redundancy, which speaks to moving water across system boundaries from areas that may be water rich in a given moment under a given set of circumstances to neighboring areas which might be water starved by virtue of whatever the circumstance might be in the moment. The Wells Development Program is ongoing. We recently did a commissioning in Bard Hill. We have 3 wells drilled. 1 is in operation, adding 300,000 gallons into the system, and we are in the process of outfitting 2 other wells to provide a total of 600,000 to 700,000 imperial gallons, which could be put into the system to ensure that we are able to meet and treat with any challenges that we face. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I would like to just we have spoken about what WASA's role is, what we have been doing, and I'd just like to tie it together in a minute. So if I could get the last slide back up, please, is important. We firmly believe, and about the fact we know, that this could only work if we work together. First, to continue to stem these tides and to make it on to the other side of all the challenges that we face, in the face of all the global climatic changes and all the other uncertainties that we now are exposed to. It requires a couple things. The first, which is demonstrated by us sitting here having this discussion with you, is a commitment by us at WASA. And I want to widen it to the wider THA and MET and all the other players at the table today to ensure that we deliver the service, a service that is commensurate with your expectations. The second side of the equation, which cannot be understated, is conservation. This is dependent upon you, the public, and it requires that we do our best as individuals, as citizens of the Republic, to ensure that we conserve, simply put, use it wisely, especially in the times of need. And finally, the third requirement is this interaction speaks directly to that. We need to talk. As WASA, we need to share, as the THA, as we need to share with you where we are, where the challenges are, so you understand where we are. But we also require you to hold our individual and collective feet to the fire to ensure that the things that we are required to do, that we do them and we hold on to ensure that we provide the service that we are mandated and paid to provide. In closing, I'd just like to ask that until the promise reigns that we promised by Mrs. Dikuto from MET from Saturday, I ask that you please value every job. Thank you, Tobago.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
Welcome.
Very extensive presentation, and I hope you were listening because, I hope you have an appreciation for the imagery that was shown, so you see where our reservoirs are at this time. You have a responsibility to manage the resources well. Please ensure, even as you are utilizing the water coming through your taps, that you are being responsible. Now is not the time to be wetting the lawn. The lawn could look brown for a little while. Grass is pretty resilient. They will bounce back. Right? Now is not the time to excessively wash the car. Now is not the time to worry so much about the dust on the car. I mean, those are material things. The car catch cold. So essentially utilize the water for that which is absolutely necessary. Mr. Williams did not say it, but I hope that WASA police, as we call them, that they are out and very vigilant, and that they'll do what's necessary to keep all of us in line and keep us managing our resources well. And one thing coming out of his presentation that we will have to talk some more about in the future will be those plans, those future plans, and also looking at long-term options. And at this point, I'm not even seeing them as long-term options. I'm seeing them as options that we perhaps need to start working on post-haste. Considering desalination, we're happy that the treatment plant in Goldsboro that is on the way already. You know, there's a project with IDB, and the THA has already made the lands available to WASA, and I know that they're doing what's necessary through the Ministry of Public Utilities to get that project moving. So we need everyone on board. Over to you now, Tima.
Well. I've heard a mouthful, and I think that it is said that it's not what happened to you, but how you react to it. And I listened to the two presentations, and I believe all of Tobago ought to be listening, and I hope that this message go as wide as it possibly can. Mr. Chief Secretary, one of the things I was blown up with is I found myself in a sort of a paradox, or some may call a oxymoron situation, where you want something, but at the same time, one is saying, I'm going to give it to you, which is the water from Med Services, which WASA actually needs so much. On the other hand, Tima is saying we don't need too much of that water. So you understand the paradox that I have been finding myself in. But one of the things is that we have recognized the importance of seeing Tobago moving towards a transformed island where we look at resilience in a very particular way. We look at the necessity of being very adaptable to situations, and also with this level of inclusiveness, we will see ourselves becoming stronger going forward. And I must stress the importance of a small island states, Tobago being part of such, where we sustainably manage our resources, leverage it in a particular way. And this is what I'm seeing coming out here when I listen carefully to the type of mitigation that our dear brother Williams, and I feel very comforted in the night when I think about his work that he's putting down on the island, and understand where he's making the reach. It's where strong governance arrangement becomes very important as we reduce disaster risk. So as we move into the hurricane season, it's important that we find the right balance in terms of approaching the season, making ourselves very hard targets. And when I say ourselves, I'm speaking to the varying sectors across Tobago. Many times we point our fingers to the domestic properties, what property owners need to do, what we need to do in our families to protect ourselves. But sometimes I see, when I look at climate change and climate variability, the mass amount of water that is being produced by these hydrological, meteorological events, it's very, very, very difficult for even a homeowner to protect themselves if the supporting infrastructure by way of sectors that have that control over, such as infrastructure, is not in place. And therefore, our appeal going forward is we are working in this month, which is designated as the disaster month in Trinidad and Tobago. My colleagues from the ODPM are on the island as well, and we have many pots are on the fire. They are down at the mall, they are down at up at the other areas of Tobago, and doing the necessary to ensure that the wider public is aware of how important this rainy season and this hurricane season is. And therefore, I want to make the appeal that as we prepare, we want you to prepare as well. What preparation means to you domestically? It means, therefore, you have to look at the weather conditions that will be coming. It is said that it's going to be well above average rainy season, or what they call a hurricane season. And therefore, one has to prepare for that. One has to understand that we have to look at our history and learn from it. In that, in 2004, I recalled that we had a situation where in the early part of the season, just around September, we were impacted by a tropical storm. And by November, it repeated itself where Charlottesville, Delaford, and these places, Speyside, were decimated by the November severe weather. And that did not stop there. The following year, it was more impacted, that even forced a change of name of our National Disaster Office from NEMA to ODPM. Our history tells us enough that we can continue to brace ourselves and to make the necessary adaptation that I speak about being adaptive or adaptable. And therefore, I want to ask the various sectors, for example, the public sectors, the business sectors, that you need to pay attention to your contingency plans. You need to, those of you who have public responsibilities for within the Tobago House of Assembly and other agencies, public utilities, and also other infrastructural development needs to pay attention to the weather conditions as it relates to hydrometeorological events and the hazards that are associated with those events. It also means that we have to look at what can happen to the north of us. For example, there are storms that may impact us. I draw reference to Hurricane Emily. While it passed to the north of us as a hurricane, or the storm's wind strength impacted the island of Tobago, impacted the island of Trinidad as well to some degree. The same thing happened to Hurricane Ivan. So these are stories that we could learn, not even if the storm is not directly on our pathway. This 7 degrees north of the equator, going up to the chain of the archipelago of islands, is one that we have to be always cognizant of, being especially where we are placed in these archipelago of islands. You know, we are just 11 degrees north of the equator, and therefore we are in the hurricane belt. So I want to urge all of us to do our preparation, ensure that our family plans are in place, ensure that we have our go kits, ensure that we have purchased the necessaries for taking care of ourselves for 72 hours. In a major disaster, help to you can come very late. So you ask people to prepare themselves to take care of themselves, their families, and their communities for at least 72 hours. It means, therefore, it is that time when we can encourage you to join CERT 1000 Strong, those young men and young women in your communities. Go join CERT 1000 Strong, get trained, get tooled, and be ready to assist in the event of a major event that affects us negatively. So I want to close there at this stage, and I want to wish us well for the upcoming season, and I hope that we'll do all that is within our power and our grips to ensure that we reduce the impact by doing the mitigations ourselves.
Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, the THA, through TEMA, we are in fact ready and prepared for the upcoming hurricane season. We do anticipate significant volumes of rainfall, and we know that that will have certainly some impact with regards to floods, landslides, damages to homes and private properties. As a matter of fact, I'll be the first to say we have not even resolved some of the issues from the extreme rainfall activities of 2022, the ending of 2022. And so we are preparing even with that in mind. I want to thank WASA for a very extensive presentation. I really hope Tobagonians were in fact paying attention. So you see that the ton court man and wicked is wicked why you ain't get the water. Is really, you could only give what we have. We could only give what we have. But we have to have a mature and extensive conversation about other solutions. So we talk desalination, we talk commissioning more wells, we talked about bringing on stream other groundwater supplies and so on. We have to have those conversations and move swiftly to some action. And certainly THA is prepared to get behind some of these strategic outputs. Questions from the media, either in the room or virtually at this time?
Good afternoon. Ms. Dikoto, I just have a question for you. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Met spoke about a 60% chance of the remainder of May to accumulate between 35 to 40 millimeter of rain, which is about 1/3 of the monthly average in Tobago. From what you explained this morning, do you think that we are heading in that direction or we may meet that target?
Well, as of this morning at 12Z, we had about, I think it was 35 millimeters of rainfall, which is 52% of the long-term average. So we will expect rainfall, as I said, over the weekend and into next week. So we'll definitely pass the 2/3 or so, but I don't know if we will reach 100% or go beyond that. But we have already passed the halfway mark of the long-term average for rainfall for May.
Okay, thanks. I guess that is good news for Mr. Williams. I have one question for you, Mr. Williams. You spoke about the reservoir levels being critical. Is it that we are talking that is it that we are saying that all of them are below 50% of the long-term average? And what level, in terms of percentage, do we need to get at for us to move out of that critical level?
Thank you for your question. We are in a place where all of the major, the impounding and the surface flows are below what they would normally be, or the recorded values for the period. The good thing about the Tobago water system, the surface sources and the impounding services that in 1-2 days of good rainfall, the position can drastically change. I have seen well, I'm an old wasserman, I've been here for a long time. I have seen in one night, 1 day rainfall, a day and a night, Hillsborough Dam catch 10 feet of water. Go from below the average to way above. And the challenge that we find ourselves in the moment is that while we're having rainfall, because before we started, I was in a little discussion with my fellow professional at Met, and she was saying, but we had rain last night. The challenge that we have in Tobago a lot of the times is that the rain doesn't fall in the areas that is useful to us at WASA. All right? And last weekend, after the last media briefing we had rain, Trinidad caught a lot of water and nobody Tobago didn't catch any. All right? We are in a bad way, but in terms of how much we need and when we need it and where we need it, it's difficult because we don't have any historical data. But generally, the recovery, once the rain begins to fall and it falls in the right areas, is usually swift. Right? So having said that, I hope I would have spoken to the response that is required, and I'd just like to close by thanking the Met Services Division for giving us all the good news that they brought us today, which says that our problems as it relates to being unable to supply because the rivers are dry are coming to an end, hopefully by the end of this weekend. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Met.
All right, let me just double check. I see there are no questions online. I wish to, oh, sorry, Mr. Stewart.
Since he is not online. Mr. Stewart, are you concerned that TEMA may have some difficulties or challenges dealing with the rainy season, especially considering that a lot of the resources were almost exhausted dealing with the oil spill?
Well, that's the reason why I'm sitting close to this good gentleman, and you have given us the assurance that we will do all that we need to do to bring our stock levels back up the way it ought to be. We have started looking at our inventories in a particular manner. And yes, we are very cognizant of the fact that during Operation Gulfstream, a number of similar type which will be required for these type of hazards were utilized in the oil spill clear. For example, tarpaulins, and you could understand how important tarpaulins are to wind type events. So that is one of the situations. Simple water, bottled water. We saw a use of over 40 cases of 500 mLs water per day based on the temperatures. The 300 plus persons operating in the field had to be those conditions that they had to be working under. So you have that type of challenge, but the assurance is there, and a number of other agencies have kicked in. I will be later on today meeting with the U.S. Embassy. They want to have that same conversation with us because they are cognizant of what took place, and therefore a number of arrangements are going to be put in place to ensure that our stocks are where they are, or if they are not where they ought to be, then the necessary disaster mechanism of the country and of the region will be utilized to deal with the response going forward.
Thank you. Online, I'm seeing now Bihari, AZP News, and after Bihari, we have Candice Jackson to big updates. So, Mr.
Yes, good morning, Bihari, AZP News. Good morning to everyone. Oh, sorry, I think it's good afternoon now. I want to ask the Chief Secretary. I heard Mr. Williams talk, about the desalination plant, and we have heard that already. And I just want to find how long you think that something like that would take to be up and running.
Well, we just literally at the feasibility stage of such a project, and is something that the THA will be willing to work with WASA on. Given we have this perennial issue, we can't be a small island in the middle of all this water and still not be able to deliver water on a 24-hour basis to all our people all the time. And so it's something that we want to action almost immediately, but you could imagine a matter like a desalination plant will require public consultation, because that will naturally have some environmental implications that must be considered, especially with the fuel intake for the generation of clean, drinkable water from a desal plant. We have to consider that along with the trade-offs. But certainly it is a consideration at this time, because we have areas like Charlottesville that historically has been without water. The reservoir that feeds into Charlottesville from somewhere after Campbellton, between Campbellton and Hermitage, that's not a very large reservoir. It can't meet the demand. We, in the survey that was done within the last 5 years, on a project that we worked on with Eric, that survey showed that there were some people in Charlottesville who were only seeing water in their taps once or twice in a 6-month period based on where they live. And then some areas on the top of Bel Air, we have a very informal system where they have created their own sort of catchment area and feeding water to themselves. The truth is, we just need a long-term solution that will finally put Charlottesville out of its misery when it comes to water. And so we just have to consider desal at this point in time. But we'll have to have the conversations with the community and ensure that it's fit for purpose and that we are meeting all of the basic environmental standards for it, and then we move. So that's where we are at this point in time. Ms. Jackson, to make updates. Candice, you there? Okay, so we're not hearing Ms. Jackson.
Good afternoon.
Yes, you're not coming through, Ms. Jackson. And Nelly says, sorry, Ms. Jackson. So let's hear from you, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, good afternoon, Chief Secretary. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my question has a little bit to do with the oil spill situation. And hopefully you'll be able to take this question right now. We know that the Prime Minister yesterday stated that, they are seeking a $23 million compensation. And I know you would have said in the House that you were not a part of those discussions. What can you tell me from the THA side of things about, calculating that compensation, especially since, there's the fishermen that are complaining that the damages to their vessels and so on are not being considered, and they are still being left by themselves and still being left to try to figure it all out while their livelihoods are being impacted by this whole situation?
I can't give much details about what's happening in the negotiations for compensation with ITOF, because we have not been party to those negotiations. We have not been invited into the room. So we could only go on what we hear from public conversations by either the Prime Minister or the Minister of Energy. The Prime Minister is saying 23 million US. The Minister of Energy did in fact say somewhat upwards to 30 million US. 23 million US brings us in at around 156.4 million TT dollars. 30 million US might be more ideal than 23 million US. But at this point, without getting confirmation in terms of what we will get insofar as compensation, it's pretty difficult to estimate essentially how we'll be able to move in terms of meeting the financial requirements. I can, however, tell you that we did make requests out of the Ministry of Finance from the mid-year review. I'm not sure when the mid-year review will happen. Once the Ministry of Finance makes monies available to the THA to treat with the oil spill cleanup at the mid-year review, then we'll be able to treat with the fisher folk and others in the space who require some relief. In the meanwhile, however, the Division of Food Security that treats specifically with marine affairs, they have actually established a committee, a working committee, that is currently assessing the claims that were submitted by the fisher folk, because those claims have to be assessed and verified even before we make relief available. Notice I'm using the term relief and not compensation. Compensation will suggest that the THA somehow put the oil there, put the vessel there, caused the disaster, and so we are compensating for that. It's relief effort. We did nothing wrong to warrant the destruction that happened, but certainly we appreciate that that industry requires some relief, and we are in fact saying yes, that will happen, but we are doing the assessments while we await what might be possible through the mid-year review. Is there a follow-up? I'm seeing Bihari hand again.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon again. I wanted to find out about the whole situation about the lack of ice production in the island. There is the whole issue of lack of water, and that is posing a problem. Is there anything being done to alleviate that situation?
Well, we are, and I want the public to appreciate that we are just as impacted as the private individuals. We have had, for example, some days last week, OCS had to shut down because we just did not have access to water. The pump blew out and procurement couldn't get a pump now for now, and we just didn't have any water in the tap, and and we just ran dry. And similarly, we will have impact on the operations at TATCO and elsewhere. So the reality is water is a basic human right that impacts all industries everywhere. We have the hotel sector being impacted, or restaurants being impacted, in the homes being impacted. There may be some days people show up to church and the church toilets have no water. So the production of ice naturally will slow, so that impacts the fishing industry especially, that require ice for their operations. But we are working with the circumstances as we have them and trying our best to make do with what we have. If we just don't have water, we just can't make the ice. And I'm not sure we can make the ice out of salt water at this time. At least we don't have that capacity. Salt water will certainly damage the equipment that we have. So we just have to be patient and pray that we get rains in good measure, not in over measure, but in good measure, so that we can efficiently refuel and refill the reservoirs, and at the same time prevent floods and all of that. I guess the next question in the room.
I'm not sure if I missed it, but could you give us an update on how much has been spent so far on the oil spill cleanup efforts, and when are we going to get an idea of the next tranche of money that's going to be spent by the THA on this disaster?
To date, we have spent approximately 17 million. That's from the THA perspective, making what essentially would be first payments to most of our contractors, service providers. We tried our best to take care of all of the small service providers, those who provided meals, transportation, and those costs that were relatively small. But for the larger contractors, I'm very sorry that all we could do at this time is small initial payments, while we hope for additional releases. Once we get those additional releases, we will then be in a position to make further payments as time progresses. All right, thank you very much. I think we will just pause for a second. Thanks to Mr. Director Stewart, Mr. Williams, and Mrs. Decoteau. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. We just pause for just one moment, because I presume members of the media may have other questions, and I will certainly want to protect the image and integrity of our good friends. I don't want to address your political concerns with them at my side. Save and except they want to put on the lovely sky blue and let's go. But let me give them a chance to exit stage left or right And I guess the technical people will just probably put up a nice little image, some nice background music. And, just do the thing nice. Thank you. I just wanted to stay for a little while longer, and I hope you members of the media appreciate this, because while I'm having this extensive conversation, I should really be in a virtual meeting with some UN representatives. But we have some technocrats from the THA there holding things down. So I appreciate if we just go straight to what your other questions might be, and let me take them quickly, as quickly as possible. Perhaps we should start online. I'm seeing Bihari, hands raised online. So Bihari, I will start with you, and then we go from there.
Yes, thank you again, Chief Secretary. Last night, the Prime Minister speaking, he spoke about giving more resources to the police to help the crime. He spoke about the IATF officers coming, the GEB officers coming. I want to know, firstly, what is your thought on that one? And a second question I have is recently you spoke about having the THA having its own constabulary force. Some people are construing that as the THA wants to have its own police force. Can you clarify that, please?
All right, so let me start with the latter. I don't know how what I said could be misconstrued as the THA having a police force at the same level or equivalence with the TTPS. They are localized police force in the municipal corporations in Trinidad. And from my perspective, anyone who sees the THA wanting to do the same as being some threat to the Twin Island Republic is really speaking from their own biases about what Tobago should or shouldn't have. I mean, it's a sort of ridiculous notion, and to be quite honest, I saw some of the newspaper headlines that fueled this ridiculousness, because I was very clear when I spoke to the media last week, I believe it was, in identifying the areas that this localized police force will treat with. I was very clear in pointing out that the THA Act does not give us the same sort of privilege or rights as the municipal corporations have with a localized force. I was clear in pointing out that this localized force will take care of some of those lower order policing activities, thereby freeing up the human resource of the TTPS to treat with crime and higher levels of criminality. So I don't understand where this notion is being posited from, as though the THA want to get rid of the TTPS and have its own equivalent police force. That was never ever stated in any form or fashion. And I am saying what we see coming across the waters, because Tobagonians understand that quite well. I even pointed out that it was since Chief Secretary Mr. Orville London that a bill was sent down to Parliament, and I'm going to go and dig and find the Hansard records, find the footage if I can find it, and we play it for all and sundry. But Tobagonians are quite clear in their minds what they want out of a localized police force, and nowhere in my description of the thing did I posit a localized police force that rivals the TTPS in any form or fashion. So this nonsense, people positing about Farley police and all kind of dotishness, is really speaking from a place of an unconscious bias that says that Tobago shouldn't get anything good, Tobago is lesser than, and Tobago somehow is not equal to Trinidad. Rubbish. And sorry I have to speak so firmly about it in that context. With regards to IATF and GB, it's something I spoke about. I met with the Minister of National Security, and I raised with the Minister of National Security about having permanent presence of IATF and GB. I have already committed to the THA in writing to the Commissioner of Police that we will expend some of our resources in preparing a place for IATF and GB to be resident on island in Tobago. While we are preparing the permanent place and we're working on converting a government quarters that will be a permanent infrastructure for IATF and GB, I have already committed to paying the rent and housing and accommodating those functions or those functionaries of the TTPS in Tobago almost immediately. A place has been identified by the TTPS as being suitable. They have gotten the agreement of the executive of the THA, and we are already moving on that. So that which and I didn't see the Prime Minister's presentation yesterday evening, but that which the Prime Minister might have spoken about, I believe, is really an extension of that which I've been talking about in the Tobago space for a little while. Any other question? I'm seeing Ms. Williams' hand.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary. I know that last evening during the conversations with the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, Colin Imbert, would have highlighted and stated that in terms of the Assembly's allocation, that this present Assembly has been getting more monies than the previous PNM. He stated that this present Assembly is getting more monies than the previous PNM. What's your view on that in terms of Tobago's allocation? Because I know you had previously aired some concerns in terms of getting Tobago's allocation on time. He also recalled a meeting that you both had along with a delegation back in 2021 on the December 23rd.
I thank you very much for that question. Yes, that meeting on December the 23rd, 2021, and I think I spoke about that meeting previously. The first government official I met with as Chief Secretary post my inauguration was in fact with Minister Imbert. But you know, when I was a student at Bishop's High School, I had an English teacher. She's still alive. I think she was a recipient of THA Awards for Tobago Day last year. Miss Agnes Thomas, beautiful lady. She had a concept she would usually use in the classroom, and she will say, that's bull rush. And I guess that might be the polite way of saying it's another type of bull. But it's really a hogwash sort of political argument, Minister Imbert, and I see some of the enslaved sycophants in Tobago parroting the same nonsense. The Tobago House of Assembly, over several years, not just now, but over several years, continue to receive on average $4.30 out of every $100 spent in the country. across the board. That has not changed. And every Tobago House of Assembly, mine, the one that was led before me, they have all asked for closer to the upper margins of the DRC recommendation, and has always been given $4.30 out of every $100. Now, let's look at it. So you see how they are trying to play smart with stupidness. And I believe Mr. London was the one who coined that. I find myself quoting him a lot these days. If the national budget is $50 billion this year, then $4.30 on the $100 will look less than if the budget is $60 billion the following year. So it's just a statistical reality. But the actual fact remains that Tobago continues to receive a very low support of $4.30 out of every $100 spent in the country. Imagine for a moment you have 2 children, and for your 2 children, every single day you will give $100 as part of the family budget for the 2 children to go to school. And you will give one child $4.30, and you give the other child the remainder of the $100. How is that equity and justice? Come on, let's make sense out of this. Further, I want to also remind Mr. Imbert that at that meeting in December 2021 and following meetings and the letters, I wrote about the near $167 million or more that is owing to the Tobago House of Assembly. Because what they do is that they make a budget and they say, look, we will give Tobago X, and by the end of the fiscal year, Tobago gets far less than what was promised or what was appropriated or passed by the parliament. And right now they have money for us, they have back pay for us. $167 million on average owed, not paid from what was actually passed in the budgets. And let me go further. Let me remind Mr. Imbert that in that December 2021 meeting, I spoke about the fact that the law says that we must receive our payments in quarterly blocks in advance, meaning for the fiscal year, a quarter is every 3 months, and we should have 4 quarters, and at the beginning of every quarter, we should have in equal parts our subvention. That is still not happening. It is still not happening. And because that has not happened since about 2017, let me tell Tobagonians what has happened. The Tobago House of Assembly has an overdraft facility. And because the monies have been coming late, the TH has been using that overdraft facility. And when we checked recently, that the interest from the usage of that overdraft was not paid by our predecessors, right? The administration by Mr. Charles, by Mr. Dennis, didn't pay on that interest. So we have some $80 million in interest to be paid on that overdraft facility simply because we're not getting the monies on time. And so we are forced to now use the overdraft facility, which is a non-collateralized overdraft facility, racking up a high interest rate. And so when we do, in fact, get the monies that are owing to us, we have to end up spending a whole lot of that paying interest. When if you just give us our money as the law says we ought to get our monies, then we do have that problem. And you see how nice I'm trying to be, because I have been holding off on going to court to force the government to abide by what the law says. Because I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be polite and kind and treat them as family and friends. But the truth is that is becoming much more difficult, given the fact that we are always left with the messy hand of the stick, the messy end of the stick. And so they need to come honest and clean with Tobago. So, Mr. Imbert, in the same way you have to fine the $3 billion you can't fine for the Auditor General, fine me $168 million that you have outstanding for us, and pay us our monies on time. Thank you. Any other question? I think the questions have been asked and answered.
Yeah, I just have
Good.
one more.
Sure.
Good afternoon, can I ask?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Also, yes.
Go ahead, Barry.
All right, so go ahead. So I'll take you, Barry. Oh, sorry, Bihari. Then I'll take you, Gonzalez, and I think there's a written question in the chat. So go ahead, Bihari.
Sure, thanks. I know last time at your press conference you spoke about getting a Coast Guard vessel to help in terms of patrolling, in terms to stop the illegal firearms and gun. That I think is causing crime in the country. How is that in place now? And I think that the issue of crime, even in Trinidad, is the bringing into our borders the illegal crime, illegal guns and ammunition. Is Tobago going to do something to be proactive in terms of trying to prevent that?
Well,
Because that is
the truth is, we have to fight crime with one hand tied behind our backs. I am a big proponent of people abiding by what the law says. The law does not give the THA legal remit over national security. And because we don't have that remit, we are also not given the budget to satisfy that. Our budget is to treat with the 33 plus areas identified under the 5th schedule. Notwithstanding that, I have been on record calling for us to properly equip the Coast Guard in Tobago to treat with border security. We don't manufacture guns in Tobago. We don't manufacture it in Trinidad. We don't import guns legally in Tobago. I don't know that there is open in Tobago a gun dealer that people could even purchase guns legally. But our streets are washed with it. And so they are coming in through our porous borders. I've spoken about the security challenges on the port, the fact that we could be right here and anything could pop up on our shores, including an overturned oil vessel doing an illegal operation. That says that we are not managing and protecting our borders efficiently. When you see the fisher folk complain about people from our other jurisdictions fishing in our waters, it's not because they're being facetious. Part of that problem is that there's a security problem. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had 2 young fishermen in the early 20s from Palatavere in trouble in sea from after 9 in the morning. And I keep reiterating this example. After 9 in the morning, boats start sinking. They are treading waters. They're able to make a call with satellite phone. No Coast Guard available. Fisher folk trying to get them, can't get them. You know they were rescued? Venezuelans fishing in Tobago waters rescued them. And fisher folk taking a vessel in a very informal way and going out and taking them up from Venezuelan fishermen. Like, really? How? In which sensible country in the world that happens? Clearly, we are not doing a good job protecting our borders. And so we are seeing the impact on land. We don't at this time have the money to buy a vessel for the Coast Guard because those vessels are very specialized and quite expensive. Trust me, if we had the money, we would have bought it long time. But we would provide the support. So, for example, if Coast Guard call and say, look, we really have a problem, we need a boat, then the boats we have at Marine, the Marine Department, the Department of Marine Affairs, we will make them available. We will even go out on a limb and pay fisher folk to make their vessels available to the Coast Guard. But that's the most we can do at this time. It's really difficult fighting this problem with one hand tied behind our backs. But we are going to give all the support we can. And let me just say, even while we quarrel and complain about what we don't have, let me say thank you for responding so quickly. Because that meeting with the Minister of National Security occurred about 2-3 weeks ago. And we are practically ready to have IATF and GB in a permanent way in Tobago. So I must say thanks for timely and such a quick response from the Commissioner of Police, the Minister and Permanent Secretary and the Ministry of National Security by extension. Ms. Gonzalez?
I'm just asking for some clarity. Last night, the Prime Minister said that the possibility of making manageable amendments to the THA Act, and that is similar to the arrangements for the municipal police in Trinidad. is expected to be made soon. But you said last week that the legal review for the establishment of the THA police has been completed, and the path is clear for its implementation. So I want to know what legal review were you speaking of, and if it is linked to what the Prime Minister spoke about last night.
No, so there are two ways that this can be done. One way is to make manageable amendments, as the Prime Minister says, which puts us at the identical place where the municipal corporations are at. The other way is for the THA to use the laws governing security firms in the country to do this. So essentially, if we don't have the amendments, the alternative, which is the legal route we are currently exploring, is the THA setting up an infrastructure akin to what security companies have. It's just that the security guards will employ and have precepted will have a public function as opposed to a private function. That's not the most ideal methodology because it's laborious, it's time-consuming, and it's trying to have a workaround. The idea will be to have manageable amendments. And I'm happy that the Prime Minister understands what I mean when I say we need a localized police force and is not going down the route as I'm seeing, quite frankly, some members in the media going down, as though the THA is proposing to have a police force that rivals TTPS. I'm happy that he actually understands what Tobagonians want in this context. That's a first. So I perhaps should applaud him in that regard.
Just one last
Sure.
question. The Ministry of National Security announced yesterday that it has located the tug vessel involved in the oil spill. Are you aware of this? And can I get a comment from you on this? I think it was located in Angola. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, I saw the news, the press story that said that the vessel might have been identified in Angola. And I saw that yesterday. I would be very happy if we are able to identify and actually apprehend accordingly or make culpable accordingly. Also yesterday, at one point yesterday, it looked as if we had a lead within our waters, but it seemed as though someone was, deliberately spoofing AIS, which is a system where people are plugging their journeys as vessels. So someone falsely plugged in AIS as though the Solo Creed was in our water. So it means that we are actively looking and paying attention to what's happening. So we will be very happy in Tobago if we are able to find the culprits and to move from there security-wise. So certainly the Ministry of National Security has our support in doing that. You would appreciate that this now has an international element to it, and that's also something that's not within the remit of the THA. Just as national security, that international remit in terms of foreign affairs won't be a remit of the THA. So we certainly expect the central government to take the lead. As I have been very clear, where the central government has a legal remit, I step back and allow them to take the lead. Where the THA have a remit, the THA shall take the lead. And so that's how we have been operating. There's a written question. Let me see if I could read it because I'm not seeing it on the tablet here. It says, do you think that Tobago would need to lean on Trinidad to obtain resources to assist in coping with the hurricane season? And can you give further details about the proposed desalination plant for Charlottesville? Well, I think I answered the second question already in pointing out where we're at, and that WASA is now presenting that idea to us. And so the feasibility has to be done, the engagement with the environmentalists have to be done, citing in terms of the appropriate location and the implications, that must be done. All of that has to be done and worked out. So that is in its extremely formative or beginning stage. In terms of the hurricane season and leaning on Trinidad for resources, at this point, I can't say whether that will be a thing, But what I could tell you what the THA does every year as part of our budget allocation, we set aside resources to treat with the hurricane season and the impact. There will be times that what we set aside will not be sufficient because naturally what we have is limited, but certainly we are looking to fill the gaps. Director Stewart spoke to some of them earlier on, such as the fact that we would have utilized a lot of our resources in the oil spill cleanup operations. And so we are essentially looking to replenish our stock, replenish our warehouse, our storehouse that is located up at Signal Hill, so that we will be able to meet the demands for the hurricane season. So essentially, as of now, we should have what we need internally, save and except we have a weather experience that is beyond what we expect at this time. With no further questions, I wish to thank you all very much. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for engaging. Thank you to Tobagonians. And please remember, importantly, you saw the struggles we have in terms of our water resources. So manage your use of water on the island. And of course, we look for rains starting this weekend, all things being equal. Sometimes the predictions don't always pan out to what we hope for, but we keep praying and our fingers crossed that we will get sufficient rainfall in this season and not rainfall to the extent that we have damages as we saw in 2022. Thank you very much. Please have a good weekend. Have a very safe weekend and have fun. Thank you. God bless you.